In a small, quiet town surrounded by rolling hills and thick forests, life moved at its own gentle pace. The air was always fresh, carrying the scent of pine trees and wildflowers. Among the residents was Sarah, a hard-working single mother who lived with her 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Their little house stood on the edge of town, close enough to see the fields stretching out toward the horizon, but far enough to feel secluded. Sarah worked tirelessly to provide for her family. During the day, she cleaned offices in the nearby city, and in the evenings she waited tables at a local diner. Despite their struggles, Sarah and Lily shared a bond that made even the toughest days seem brighter. Lily was a bright and curious child, always full of questions about the world around her. She loved exploring the woods behind their home, collecting rocks, feathers, and anything else she found interesting. Her laughter often filled their tiny house, bringing warmth to Sarah's heart. Though they didn't have much money, Sarah made sure Lily never felt deprived. Together they created their own happiness, finding joy in simple things like baking cookies or stargazing on clear nights. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze, Sarah picked Lily up from school. They decided to take a shortcut through a narrow dirt road that cut through the forest. It was a route they rarely used, mostly because it was bumpy and overgrown, but today Sarah thought it might save them some time. As they drove along the uneven path, the car jostling slightly, Lily chattered excitedly about her day at school. She talked about her favorite teacher, the new book she was reading, and how she wanted to be an animal doctor when she grew up. Sarah listened intently, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm. But then, something unusual caught Sarah's eye, a flash of color near the edge of the woods. At first, she thought it might be a deer or some other wildlife, but as she slowed down, she realized it was a person. A man was tied to a tree, his head slumped forward as though he had given up. His clothes were expensive-looking, far fancier than anything anyone in their town would wear. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Was this a trick, or was he really in trouble? She pulled the car to a stop and turned off the engine. For a moment she hesitated, unsure of what to do. "Mom, is he okay?" Lily asked, her voice tinged with worry. Sarah glanced at her daughter, seeing the concern in her wide eyes. She knew she couldn't just drive away. "Stay here," Sarah instructed firmly, though she doubted Lily would listen. Sure enough, as soon as Sarah stepped out of the car, Lily followed close behind. As they approached the man cautiously, Sarah noticed more details. His hands were bound tightly with rope, and his face was streaked with dirt. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was something commanding about him. His posture, even in defeat, hinted at authority. Up close, they could see that his jacket was tailored, his boots polished despite the mud caked on them. This wasn't just any man. He was someone important, someone wealthy. "Are you hurt?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but soft. The man stirred, lifting his head slowly. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, Sarah saw fear mixed with relief. "Please," he rasped, his voice hoarse, "help me." Without another thought, Sarah knelt beside him and began working on the ropes. They were tight, almost cutting into his wrists, but she managed to loosen them with some effort. Lily stood nearby, clutching a bottle of water she'd grabbed from the car. When the ropes finally fell away, the man slumped forward, exhausted. Sarah helped him sit up, supporting his weight as best she could. "Here, drink this," Lily said, holding out the water bottle. The man took it gratefully, sipping slowly. After a few moments, he seemed to regain some strength. "Thank you," he said, his voice stronger now. "I don't know how I can repay you." Sarah shook her head. "Don't worry about that. Just tell us what happened." The man introduced himself as Richard Langston. He explained that he owned several ranches in the area, including one not far from where they were standing. Earlier that day, he'd been inspecting his property when a group of men ambushed him. They tied him to the tree and left him there, presumably to teach him a lesson. Richard believed it was the work of a rival businessman who wanted to take over his land. "I've been here for hours," he admitted, looking embarrassed. "I thought no one would find me." Sarah felt a mix of anger and pity. Whoever had done this was cruel, leaving a man to suffer in such a desolate place. But she pushed those thoughts aside for now. "We need to get you somewhere safe," she said. Richard nodded weakly, leaning on her for support as they walked back to the car. Lily opened the door for him, her small hands gripping the handle tightly. Once he was settled in the back seat, Sarah climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. On the way back to town, Richard told them more about himself. He spoke of his sprawling ranches, his prized cattle, and the challenges of running such a large operation. Sarah listened quietly, trying to process everything. It was surreal to think that someone so powerful could end up needing help from two ordinary people like her and Lily. Yet here they were, driving through the countryside with a millionaire rancher in their beat-up sedan. When they reached the outskirts of town, Richard insisted they stop at a clinic so he could get checked out. Sarah agreed, though part of her wondered if she should have taken him straight to the police. Still, she trusted her instincts, and something about Richard felt genuine. As they waited outside the clinic, Lily tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Do you think he'll be okay?" she whispered. Sarah smiled down at her. "He will be, thanks to you." Later that evening, after Richard had been treated and released, he invited Sarah and Lily to dinner at a fancy restaurant in town. Sarah hesitated, feeling out of place in her worn jeans and sweater, but Richard insisted. Over a meal of steak and roasted vegetables, he expressed his gratitude once again. "You saved my life today," he said solemnously. "I won't forget that." Sarah shrugged modestly. Anyone would have done the same. But Richard shook his head. "Not everyone. Most people wouldn't have stopped. You did, and I want to repay you somehow." Sarah waved him off, insisting it wasn't necessary, but deep down she couldn't help but wonder what kind of repayment he had in mind. Little did she know, this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would change their lives, forever. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, she replayed the day's events in her mind. From the moment she spotted Richard tied to the tree to the luxurious dinner they shared, it all seemed unreal. Yet there was no denying the impact it had already made. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a future different from the one she had planned. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The days that followed Richard's rescue passed quickly, yet they felt like a whirlwind for Sarah and Lily. Life in their small town was usually predictable, but now, everything seemed different. Richard had promised to repay them, and though Sarah tried to brush it off as unnecessary, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to happen. Every time she thought about it, her mind raced with possibilities. Would he send them a thank you card? Maybe a gift basket? She didn't dare imagine anything more than that. Meanwhile, Richard wasted no time showing his gratitude. The very next morning, a sleek black car pulled up outside their house. Sarah was hanging laundry on the line when she saw it approach. Her heart skipped a beat as the driver stepped out and opened the back door. Richard emerged, looking much better than he had the day before. His clothes were clean and pressed, and there was a renewed confidence in his step. He smiled warmly as he walked toward her. "Good morning, Sarah," he said, tipping an imaginary hat. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and shook her head. "Not at all. What brings you here?" Before Richard could answer, Lily came running out of the house, her pigtails bouncing. "Mr. Langston!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Richard chuckled and patted her back gently. "Hello, young lady. It's good to see you again." For a moment, Sarah watched the scene unfold, marveling at how easily Lily had taken to him. There was something endearing about the way Richard treated her daughter, with genuine kindness and respect. Richard gestured for Sarah to sit with him on the porch steps. Reluctantly, she joined him, still unsure of what to expect. "I've been thinking," he began, his tone serious but warm, "about how I can properly thank you both. You didn't just save me, you gave me my life back, and I want to make sure you know how much that means to me." Sarah opened her mouth to protest, but Richard held up a hand to stop her. "Please, let me finish." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded document. Handing it to Sarah, he said, "This is a deed to a piece of land adjacent to my main ranch. It includes a farmhouse, some cattle, and all the equipment you'll need to get started." Sarah stared at the paper in disbelief. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words. I don't understand," she stammered. "Why are you doing this?" Richard leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Because you deserve it. Because you showed me kindness when I needed it most. This isn't charity, it's an opportunity. I believe in your strength, Sarah, and I think you and Lily could do amazing things with this place." Sarah's mind was a blur. She glanced at Lily, who was watching with wide, excited eyes, then back at Richard. "But I don't know anything about ranching," she admitted. "What if I mess it up?" Richard laughed softly. "That's why I'll be here to help. Consider me your mentor. I'll teach you everything you need to know. How to care for the animals, manage the land, even handle business deals. You won't be alone in this." Sarah felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to say no, to insist that she couldn't accept such a generous gift, but something stopped her. Deep down, she knew this was more than just generosity. It was trust. Trust that she could rise to the occasion, that she could build something meaningful for herself and her daughter. After a long pause, Sarah nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll try." Richard's face lit up with a smile. "You won't regret it," he assured her. Over the next few hours, he walked them through the details of the property, explaining its history and potential. By the time he left, Sarah and Lily were buzzing with excitement and nerves. They spent the rest of the day talking about what lay ahead, imagining their new life on the ranch. The transition wasn't easy. Moving from their tiny house to the sprawling farmhouse was overwhelming at first. The property was beautiful, with lush pastures and towering oak trees, but it also came with responsibilities neither of them had anticipated. Sarah quickly realized that running a ranch required long hours and hard work. Mornings began before sunrise, feeding the cattle and checking fences. Evenings were spent repairing equipment or planning for the next day. Despite the exhaustion, Sarah found herself enjoying the rhythm of ranch life. There was a sense of purpose in every task, a satisfaction in seeing the results of her efforts. Lily adapted just as quickly, embracing her role with enthusiasm. She loved feeding the chickens and collecting eggs each morning, often racing against herself to see how fast she could finish. Her laughter echoed across the fields, bringing lightness to even the toughest days. Together, mother and daughter tackled challenges head-on, learning as they went. Neighbors who had once pitied them now looked on in admiration. Word spread quickly about the single mom and her daughter, who had turned a neglected piece of land into a thriving operation. Richard visited regularly, offering guidance and support. He taught Sarah how to read market trends and negotiate with suppliers, skills she never imagined she'd need. Under his watchful eye, she gained confidence, realizing she was capable of far more than she had ever dreamed. Their bond grew stronger with each passing week, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Richard became more than just a benefactor. He was a friend, someone Sarah could rely on when things got tough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah stood on the porch, watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of hay and earth. Richard joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "How are you holding up?" he asked, handing her one of the cups. Sarah took a sip, savoring the warmth. "Better than I expected," she admitted. "It's hard work, but it's worth it." Richard nodded, his gaze sweeping over the property. "You've done an incredible job. I knew you could handle it." Sarah smiled, feeling a swell of pride. For so long she had doubted herself, convinced she wasn't cut out for anything beyond her modest life in town. But here she was, proving herself wrong every single day. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing in me." As the weeks turned into months, the ranch continued to flourish. Sarah hired a few local workers to help with the heavier tasks, ensuring the operation ran smoothly. She also invested in improvements, upgrading the barn and installing irrigation systems to make the land more productive. Each decision brought her closer to her goal, creating a stable, prosperous future for Lily. Watching her daughter thrive in this environment filled Sarah with a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, times when Sarah wondered if she was making the right choices. Weather fluctuations, market changes, and unexpected expenses tested her resolve. Yet, through it all, she persevered, drawing strength from her love for Lily and the support of Richard. Slowly but surely, she transformed from a hesitant beginner into a confident rancher, earning the respect of those around her. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves blanketed the ground, Sarah stood at the edge of the pasture surveying the land she now called home. The sight of healthy cattle grazing peacefully, the sound of birds chirping in the distance, it all felt surreal. Just a year ago, she had been struggling to make ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. Now she owned a thriving ranch with a bright future stretching out before her. As Lily ran up to join her, clutching a bouquet of wildflowers, Sarah wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "What do you think, sweetheart?" she asked. "Do you like our new life?" Lily beamed up at her. "I love it, Mom. It's perfect." Sarah hugged her tightly, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them here. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt hopeful. Whatever came next, she knew they would face it together, ready to embrace whatever opportunities and challenges lay ahead. As the seasons changed, so did Sarah and Lily's lives in ways they could never have imagined. The ranch had become more than just a piece of land. It was their home, their livelihood, and a testament to their hard work. Every sunrise brought new challenges, but it also brought opportunities to grow stronger together. Sarah learned quickly that running a ranch wasn't just about feeding cattle or fixing fences. It was about making decisions that would shape not only their present but also their future. One chilly winter morning, as frost clung to the grass and the air carried a sharp bite, Sarah bundled up in her thickest coat and headed out to check on the animals. The cows were huddled close for warmth, their breath forming tiny clouds in the cold air. Lily trailed behind her, wearing mismatched mittens and boots 2 sizes too big. "Mom, can we build a snowman later?" she asked, her cheeks rosy from the cold. Sarah laughed softly. "We'll see, sweetheart. First, let's make sure everyone here is okay." It was moments like these that reminded Sarah how far they'd come. A year ago, she wouldn't have known where to start when it came to caring for livestock or managing acres of land. Now she moved through her daily tasks with ease, her confidence growing with each passing day. Still, there were times when doubts crept in. Was she doing enough? Could she keep this up forever? Whenever those thoughts surfaced, she reminded herself why she was doing this. For Lily. For a better life, free from the constant struggle they had once known. Richard continued to play an important role in their journey. He visited often, sometimes bringing supplies, other times offering advice on how to handle unexpected problems. His presence was comforting, like having a safety net when things felt uncertain. One afternoon, as they sat by the fireplace sipping hot cocoa, Richard shared a story about his own early days as a rancher. "I made plenty of mistakes," he admitted with a chuckle. "But every failure taught me something valuable. You're doing great, Sarah. Trust yourself." Sarah appreciated his encouragement, but she also knew that success didn't come overnight. There were still hurdles to overcome, especially when it came to finances. Running a ranch required money, not just for day-to-day operations, but also for long-term investments. Sarah had been careful with her budget, cutting costs wherever possible, but there were limits to how much she could stretch their resources. She often stayed up late at night poring over spreadsheets and trying to find solutions. Lily, ever observant, noticed her mother's stress. One evening, after dinner, she climbed onto Sarah's lap and wrapped her arms around her neck. "You're the best mom ever," she whispered, "even if you don't think so right now." Sarah hugged her tightly, blinking back tears. "Thank you, my sweet girl. That means more to me than you know. Despite the challenges, there were plenty of joyful moments too. Spring arrived with a burst of color, painting the fields with wildflowers and filling the air with the songs of returning birds. Sarah and Lily spent hours outdoors, planting gardens and exploring the woods. They built a small pen for baby lambs, which quickly became Lily's favorite spot on the ranch. Watching her daughter bond with the animals filled Sarah with pride. It was clear that Lily had inherited her love for nature and creatures big and small. Summer brought its own set of adventures. With longer days and warmer weather, the ranch buzzed with activity. Sarah hired additional hands to help with harvesting hay and preparing for market season. She also enrolled in a local agricultural course, eager to learn more about sustainable farming practices. Richard accompanied her to one of the classes, joking that he might pick up a few new tricks himself. "Never stop learning," he told her. "That's the key to success." By fall, the ranch was thriving. The cattle were healthy, the crops abundant, and the farmhouse had been renovated into a cozy retreat. Sarah hosted a small gathering to celebrate their progress, inviting neighbors and friends who had supported them along the way. As guests mingled under strings of twinkling lights, laughter filled the crisp night air. Lily darted between tables, showing off her pet lamb to anyone who would listen. Sarah stood back, watching the scene unfold with a sense of quiet satisfaction. This was what she had worked so hard for, a community, a place to belong. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, a new challenge arose. One evening, as Sarah reviewed invoices at the kitchen table, she received a call from Richard. His voice was tense, unlike his usual calm tone. "There's trouble brewing," he said. "My business rival, the same man who tried to sabotage me last year, is causing problems again. He's spreading rumors about our operation, trying to scare away buyers." Sarah felt her stomach drop. After all they had accomplished, the thought of losing ground was devastating. The next few weeks were stressful. Sales slowed down and some suppliers grew hesitant to work with them. Sarah worried about how they would recover, but Richard reassured her. "We've faced worse," he said firmly, "and we'll get through this too." Together, they devised a plan to counteract the false rumors. Sarah reached out to loyal customers, explaining the situation honestly and promising transparency. She also organized an open house event, inviting people to visit the ranch and see for themselves how well it was run. The effort paid off. Visitors were impressed by the care and dedication evident in every corner of the property. Word spread quickly, and soon orders began pouring in again. Through it all, Sarah realized something important. Resilience wasn't just about enduring hardships. It was about finding creative ways to overcome them. With determination and teamwork, anything was possible. As the year drew to a close, Sarah reflected on everything they had achieved. From rescuing Richard tied to a tree to building a successful ranch, their journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. But more than the material gains, it was the relationships they had formed that mattered most. Richard had become family, always ready with a kind word or helping hand. Neighbors who had once been strangers now greeted them warmly, pitching in whenever needed. And Lily, bright, curious, and fearless, was blossoming into a remarkable young girl. On Christmas Eve, as snow blanketed the ranch in a shimmering white coat, Sarah gathered everyone around the fireplace. Richard had joined them, along with a few close friends. Lily handed out mugs of hot chocolate before settling onto the rug with her favorite stuffed animal. "This has been the best year ever," she declared, looking up at Sarah with shining eyes. Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "It has been pretty amazing, hasn't it?" As they exchanged gifts and shared stories, Sarah allowed herself to dream about the future. What lay ahead was unknown, but she no longer feared it. With love, hard work, and a little bit of luck, she believed they could face whatever came their way. For now, though, she was content to enjoy the moment, to bask in the warmth of family, friendship, and the knowledge that they had created something truly special. Outside, the snow continued to fall, muffling the world in peaceful silence. Inside, laughter and joy filled the air, wrapping everyone in a cocoon of happiness. It was a perfect ending to a year that had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately brought them closer together. Whatever the new year held, Sarah knew one thing for certain. They were ready. The new year began with a fresh blanket of snow covering the ranch, sparkling under the pale winter sun. Sarah woke early, as she always did, and stood by the window with a cup of steaming coffee in her hands. She watched the fields stretch out. Before her, silent and still except for the occasional gust of wind that sent flurries swirling across the ground. It was moments like these, quiet, peaceful, that made her feel truly grateful for everything they had built. Yet, even in the calm, she knew there were challenges ahead. Life on the ranch was never without its ups and downs. Lily bounded into the kitchen, already dressed in layers for the cold morning. "Can we check on the lambs today?" she asked excitedly. Sarah smiled, setting down her mug. "Of course. Let's bundle up first, you don't want to freeze out there." Together they pulled on their coats, scarves, and gloves, then stepped outside into the crisp air. The lambs huddled together in their pen, bleating softly as they saw Lily approach. She knelt beside them, stroking their woolly heads while talking to them in a gentle voice. "You're so lucky," she said to one particularly fluffy lamb. "You get to live here forever." Sarah chuckled at her daughter's words. In many ways, it felt like they were living a dream. But dreams came with responsibilities, and Sarah was determined not to let anything slip through the cracks. That afternoon, she met with Richard to discuss plans for expanding the ranch. He had suggested introducing a new breed of cattle that could fetch higher prices at market, and Sarah wanted to weigh the pros and cons carefully. They sat in his study, surrounded by maps and charts, debating logistics and costs. "It's a risk," Richard admitted. "But sometimes risks lead to the greatest rewards." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. She trusted Richard's judgment, but she also knew she had to trust herself. After all, this was her ranch now, or at least part of it, and every decision affected her family's future. By the end of the meeting, she felt confident enough to move forward. "We'll give it a try," she said firmly. "If it works, great. If not, we'll figure something else out." As spring approached, the ranch buzzed with activity. The new calves arrived, healthy and strong, bringing a sense of renewal to the land. Sarah threw herself into work, juggling tasks from dawn until dusk. Between tending to the animals, overseeing repairs, and managing finances, she barely had time to catch her breath. Yet despite the exhaustion, she found joy in the rhythm of ranch life. Every chore, no matter how small, contributed to something bigger, a thriving operation that supported her family and brought pride to her heart. Lily, too, embraced her role with enthusiasm. Now 10 years old, she was growing into a capable helper, eager to learn everything she could about the ranch. She shadowed Sarah wherever she went, asking endless questions and soaking up knowledge like a sponge. One day, as they repaired a fence line together, Lily looked up at her mother with admiration. "You're really good at this, Mom," she said earnestly. "Do you think I'll be as good someday?" Sarah paused, leaning on the post hammer. "Better," she replied with a smile. "You're already smarter than I was at your age." Their bond grew stronger with each passing season, forged through shared experiences and mutual support. Even during the toughest days, when things didn't go as planned, they faced challenges side by side. Once, during a sudden storm, the roof of the barn collapsed, trapping some of the equipment inside. Sarah and Lily worked tirelessly alongside the hired hands to clear the debris and salvage what they could. It was backbreaking work, but they didn't complain. Instead, they laughed and joked, turning the disaster into an adventure. Richard remained a constant presence in their lives, offering guidance and encouragement whenever needed. He often joined them for meals or evening walks around the property, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. Over time, he became more than just a mentor. He was a friend, someone Sarah could turn to when she needed advice, or simply someone to listen. One evening, as they strolled along the edge of the pasture, Richard spoke candidly about his past. "When I started out, I made plenty of mistakes," he confessed. But I learned from them, and I wouldn't trade those lessons for anything. Sarah appreciated his honesty. It reminded her that success wasn't about being perfect, it was about perseverance. Still, there were moments when self-doubt crept in. As the ranch grew, so did the pressure to keep up with demand. Buyers expected quality products delivered on time, and suppliers demanded prompt payments. Balancing all these responsibilities sometimes felt overwhelming. On nights when sleep eluded her, Sarah would sit by the window staring at the stars and wondering if she was doing enough. But then she'd remember the progress they had made. The once neglected fields now lush with crops. The dilapidated farmhouse transformed into a cozy home. The bond between her and Lily stronger than ever. These reminders kept her going, fueling her determination to succeed. She also drew strength from the community that had rallied around them. Neighbors who had initially been skeptical of her ability to run a ranch now praised her efforts, offering help whenever needed. Their support meant the world to Sarah, reinforcing her belief that kindness begets kindness. Summer brought its own set of challenges, including droughts that threatened the crops. Sarah implemented water conservation techniques she had learned in her agricultural courses, ensuring the land stayed hydrated despite the lack of rain. She also diversified their income streams by starting a small roadside stand where locals could purchase fresh produce and eggs. The venture proved successful, drawing customers from neighboring towns. Watching people admire their hard work filled Sarah with pride. "Look at us," she told Lily one afternoon as they counted earnings from the stand. "We're building something special." By fall, the ranch was thriving. The new cattle breed had adapted well to the environment, fetching impressive prices at market. Sarah reinvested the profits into improvements, adding solar panels to reduce energy costs and upgrading irrigation systems for better efficiency. Each step forward felt like a victory, proof that their efforts were paying off. During a harvest festival hosted on the property, Sarah took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers mingled happily, enjoying food, music, and games organized by Lily. As fireworks lit up the night sky, Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter. "What do you think, sweetheart? Did we do okay?" Lily grinned up at her. "We did amazing, Mom. Everyone loves our ranch." Sarah hugged her tightly, feeling a surge of gratitude. This was what mattered most. Not the money or the accolades, but the connections they had formed and the legacy they were creating together. Yet even in the midst of success, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was on the horizon. Richard had hinted at it during their last conversation, mentioning changes in his personal life that might affect the ranch. At first, Sarah dismissed it as idle talk, but his tone suggested otherwise. "There's something I need to tell you," he said one evening, his expression unusually serious. "But not tonight, soon." Sarah spent the following days wondering what he meant. Whatever it was, she hoped it wouldn't disrupt the delicate balance they had achieved. For now, though, she focused on the present, cherishing the moments of peace and happiness that filled their days. Whether feeding the animals at sunrise, laughing with Lily over dinner, or sharing stories with Richard by the fire, life on the ranch was rich with meaning. And as long as they had each other, Sarah believed they could face whatever the future held. The autumn leaves crunched underfoot as Sarah walked along the edge of the pasture, her mind heavy with thoughts. It had been a week since Richard's cryptic comment about needing to talk, and though she tried not to dwell on it, curiosity gnawed at her. What could he possibly want to say that required such buildup? She glanced toward the main house where Richard was staying for a few days. His car sat parked outside, gleaming in the late afternoon sunlight. Lily was inside with him, helping set the table for dinner. The sight brought a small smile to Sarah's face. Her daughter adored Richard, and he clearly felt the same way about her. As evening fell, they gathered around the dining table, the aroma of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread filling the room. Conversation flowed easily, laughter punctuating stories of the day's events. But beneath the surface, Sarah sensed a tension in Richard's demeanor. He seemed distracted, his usual warmth tempered by an unspoken weight. Finally, after dessert, he cleared his throat and looked directly at Sarah. "There's something I need to share," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "It's important." Sarah exchanged a glance with Lily, who shrugged, innocently. "Okay," Sarah said slowly, bracing herself. Richard took a deep breath before continuing. "I've been thinking about my legacy, the future of the ranches, the business, everything I've built over the years. My children from my first marriage, well, they're not interested in continuing this life. They've chosen different paths, and I respect that. But it leaves me wondering who will carry on what I've started." He paused, letting his words sink in. Sarah felt her heart race. Where was he going with this? "What does that have to do with us?" she asked cautiously. Richard smiled, a mixture of fondness and resolve in his eyes. "Everything," he replied. "You and Lily, you've shown me what dedication, hard work, and kindness look like. You've turned this piece of land into something extraordinary, and I believe you're the right person to take over, not just your ranch, but all of it." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "All of it?" she echoed faintly. Richard nodded. "Yes. I want you to become co-owner of my entire ranching empire. Together, we can ensure its success for generations to come." The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fireplace. Sarah's mind raced, struggling to process what he was offering. This wasn't just a gift. It was a monumental responsibility, one she hadn't anticipated. Lily broke the silence, her voice bright with excitement. "That's amazing, Mom. You'd be so good at it." Sarah turned to her daughter, seeing the trust and admiration in her eyes. She wanted to feel the same enthusiasm, but doubt lingered. "Richard, I don't know what to say," she admitted. "This is incredible, but are you sure? It's your life's work, your family's history." Richard leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I've never been more certain of anything. You saved me, not just physically, but emotionally. You reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. And now, I want to pass the torch to someone who shares my values, someone I trust completely." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she absorbed his words. For so long she had doubted her abilities, convinced she wasn't cut out for greatness. Yet here was Richard, telling her she was worthy of this immense honor. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "If you truly believe in me, then yes, I'll do it. But only if you promise to stay involved. I still need your guidance, your wisdom." Richard grinned, visibly relieved. "Of course, I'm not going anywhere. We'll tackle this together." The decision felt surreal, almost dreamlike, but also deeply right. Over the next few weeks, they began the process of transitioning ownership, drawing up legal documents, and planning strategies for the future. Sarah threw herself into learning every aspect of Richard's operation, determined to live up to his expectations. The transition wasn't without challenges. Managing multiple properties required juggling, countless details from staffing to finances to marketing. There were moments when Sarah questioned whether she was ready for such a massive undertaking. But each time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of how far she had already come. From rescuing Richard tied to a tree to overseeing an empire, her journey was proof that perseverance could overcome any obstacle. Lily adapted seamlessly to their new reality, embracing her role as part of the ranching dynasty. Now 11 years old, she was growing into a confident and compassionate young girl, eager to contribute however she could. She helped organize community events, assisted with bookkeeping, and even pitched ideas for improving efficiency. Her creativity and energy inspired everyone around her, including Sarah. "She's going to be unstoppable when she grows up," Richard remarked one day, watching Lily lead a group of kids on a tour of the stables. Sarah laughed, pride swelling in her chest. "She already is." As winter approached, the ranch prepared for its busiest season yet. Holiday markets, cattle auctions, and seasonal festivities kept everyone busy. Sarah worked tirelessly to ensure everything ran smoothly, often rising before dawn and returning home long after sunset. Despite the exhaustion, she found joy in the chaos, knowing they were building something lasting. On Christmas Eve, the entire team gathered in the barn for a celebration. Strings of lights twinkled above, casting a warm glow over tables laden with food and decorations crafted by hand. Richard stood at the center of the room, raising a glass in a toast. "To Sarah and Lily," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Two remarkable women who remind us all what true strength looks like. Thank you for being part of this family." Applause erupted, echoing through the rafters. Sarah felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she hugged Lily close. This was more than a job or a business. It was a community, united by shared purpose and love. In the quiet moments that followed, as snowflakes drifted lazily outside, Sarah reflected on the twists and turns that had brought them here. Rescuing Richard had seemed like a simple act of kindness at the time, but it had sparked a chain reaction that transformed their lives in unimaginable ways. Every challenge, every triumph, had shaped them into who they were today. Stronger, wiser, and infinitely grateful. Looking ahead, Sarah knew there would be more hurdles to face, more decisions to make. But she also knew they wouldn't face them alone. With Richard's unwavering support, Lily's boundless optimism, and the loyalty of their team, they were ready for whatever lay ahead. As the clock struck midnight, ushering in a new year, Sarah stepped outside to watch the snow blanket the fields in silence. "Happy New Year, Mom," Lily whispered, joining her on the porch. Sarah wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Happy New Year, sweetheart. Here's to everything we've built and everything we'll build together." Under the starlit sky, surrounded by the beauty of the land they called home, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. Their story was far from over, but one thing was certain. No matter what happened, they would continue to write it with courage, love, and hope. The years rolled by, each one bringing new adventures and challenges to Sarah, Lily, and their ever-growing ranching empire. What had started as a simple act of kindness, rescuing Richard tied to a tree, had blossomed into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The ranch wasn't just a business anymore. It was a legacy, a symbol of resilience, hard work, and the power of human connection. And at its heart were two remarkable women who had proven time and again that they were capable of achieving the impossible. Sarah had fully embraced her role as co-owner of Richard's vast operation. Under her leadership, the ranches flourished in ways no one had anticipated. She implemented sustainable practices, introduced innovative technologies, and fostered partnerships with local communities. Her reputation grew beyond the hills and fields. They spoke of her in neighboring towns, cities, and even across state lines. Farmers sought her advice, suppliers trusted her reliability, and customers praised the quality of her products. Yet, despite her success, Sarah remained humble, always crediting her team and remembering where she had come from. Lily, now a teenager, had grown into an extraordinary young woman. Her passion for animals led her to pursue veterinary studies, and she spent summers working alongside Sarah, learning the intricacies of running the ranch while caring for injured or sick livestock. She dreamed of opening a clinic on the property, someday, where she could help not only their animals but also those belonging to neighbors and friends. "It's my way of giving back," she told Sarah one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "Just like you gave us this life." Richard, though older now, still played an active role in their lives. He mentored Sarah through tough decisions, shared stories of his youth, and offered wisdom gained from decades of experience. But more importantly, he became family, a grandfather figure to Lily and a steadfast friend to Sarah. His presence reminded them that success wasn't measured solely by wealth or achievements, but by the bonds they forged along the way. One crisp spring morning, as wildflowers began to bloom across the fields, Richard called Sarah and Lily to his study. They entered to find him seated by the window, sunlight streaming through the glass behind him. On the desk before him lay a stack of papers and a leather-bound journal. His expression was thoughtful, tinged with emotion. "There's something I need to share with you both," he said softly. Sarah and Lily exchanged curious glances before taking seats opposite him. Richard opened the journal, revealing pages filled with handwritten notes, sketches, and photographs. "This is my life's work," he explained. "Every lesson I've learned, every decision I've made, it's all here. I want you to have it." He handed the journal to Sarah, who accepted it with trembling hands. "But there's more," he continued. "I've revised my will. You, Sarah, are now the sole owner of everything. The ranches, the land, the cattle. It's yours to carry forward." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she struggled to find words. "Richard, I don't know what to say. This is too much." He shook his head gently, his gaze unwavering. "It's not too much. It's exactly right. My children understand. They know this is where my heart lies. With you. With Lily. With this land." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "You've given me peace knowing that my legacy is in good hands. Promise me you'll keep building, keep dreaming." "We promise," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Beside her, Lily nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her cheeks. For a long moment, none of them spoke, letting the weight of his words settle over them. Then Richard smiled, breaking the silence. "Good. Now let's go see what mischief those calves are getting into." Life moved forward, shaped by Richard's final gift and the responsibilities it carried. Over the following months, Sarah worked tirelessly to honor his trust. She expanded the ranch's outreach programs, teaching local youth about agriculture and sustainability. She partnered with schools to create internships, giving young people opportunities to learn skills that would serve them well in the future. Meanwhile, Lily poured herself into her studies, determined to make her dream of a veterinary clinic a reality. When Richard passed away peacefully one autumn evening, surrounded by loved ones, the loss was felt deeply. Yet, his spirit lived on. In the laughter of workers, the health of the land, and the warmth of the community he had helped build. At his memorial service, held under a canopy of golden leaves, Sarah stood before a crowd of friends, neighbors, and colleagues. "Richard taught us many things," she began, her voice steady despite her grief. "But the most important lesson was this: kindness matters, compassion matters. When we care for others, when we lift each other up, we create something beautiful. That's his legacy, and it's ours now to protect and grow." In the years that followed, Sarah and Lily transformed the ranch into a beacon of hope and opportunity. They built the veterinary clinic Lily had always dreamed of, offering free services to struggling farmers. They hosted events that brought people together, fostering a sense of unity and purpose. And they never forgot the values Richard had instilled in them: generosity, integrity, and perseverance. Their story spread far beyond the borders of their town. Journalists wrote articles about the single mother and her daughter who had turned a chance encounter into a thriving empire. Business leaders praised Sarah's leadership, calling her a model of entrepreneurial excellence. Environmentalists applauded her commitment to sustainability, citing her efforts as examples for others to follow. But to Sarah and Lily, none of that mattered as much as the lives they touched daily, the families they supported, the animals they cared for, the dreams they nurtured. On quiet evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah and Lily often walked along the edge of the pasture just as they had done countless times before. They talked about the past, reflecting on how far they had come, and dreamed about the future, imagining all they could still achieve. One night, as stars twinkled above, Lily turned to her mother with a question. "Do you think Grandpa Richard is proud of us?" Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. "I know he is," she replied. "He believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves, and because of him, we've been able to do things we never thought possible." Lily hugged her tightly, resting her head against Sarah's shoulder. "We'll keep making him proud, Mom, no matter what." As the seasons changed once again, painting the landscape in vibrant colors, Sarah and Lily faced the future with courage and determination. Their journey had been anything but ordinary, shaped by acts of kindness, moments of hardship, and boundless love. From rescuing a stranger tied to a tree to building an empire rooted in compassion, They had proven that even the smallest gestures could lead to extraordinary outcomes. And as they stood side by side, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: their story was far from over.